All right, so we have another treat for you. Go ahead and be seated. We're going to, the message today is going to be from Elder Mike. Come on up.
Shabbat Shalom once again. No, Elisha, come get the, I'm gonna have my son get my reader today. Putting him to work. Glory to God. All right, so before I even do this, I'm gonna I'm gonna just go to God in prayer. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King, I just thank you for this day, for this service, for everything that's taken place up to this point. I pray that as I get ready to go forth to bring your word, that as I decrease, that you would increase, and that it would not be me, but it would be you that the people hear. I bless you, I praise you, and I give you all the glory, the honor, and praise. Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach. So, first of all, I got a surprise. I know I said probably 5, something like that months ago, we was kind of joking about the slides, and I said one of these days I would have a slide. And since the time I've been in Messiah, Beit Messiah, and even when it was Messiah Chai, I've never used slides. Well, today I'm doing that. So, and y'all thought I'd never do it, but I actually did it. So I guess you put it up.
You got a clicker?
Oh, I do.
Want me to click?
Yes, ma'am. That'd be great. So the topic that God's given is exposing the matrix. And so this is really, this teaching that I'm about to do is a culmination of everything that I've done for this entire year. Because if you notice, everything that I've taught has always been on the state of the church and why we are falling short as a body, you know, and what needs to be done for us to get right. And so this teaching right here is a culmination of all of that. And so it's funny that this movie, The Matrix, I know everybody's seen it. I mean, it was like in my opinion, one of the hottest movies of all times. And it came out in 1999, and I remember that I went to see it with my pastor at the time. And I remember we went through and watched the movie, and our mouths just opened the whole movie like, wow. I mean, we were just blown away. And what we didn't know is that the same thing he's getting out of it, I'm getting out of it. The same way he's looking at it, I'm looking at it. And so when the movie was over with, I mean, we talked about it for hours, just talking about the correlation between what took place in the movie and the spirit realm. I mean, it was just really mind-blowing because you're seeing the world we live in, you're seeing the spiritual aspect played out in the movie. And I mean, I'm not sure if I'm the only one that really got that out of the movie, but it's always been a very special movie to me. You know, and so it's funny that probably, 5 months ago? No, something like that. Probably about 5 months ago, I remember I woke up one morning and something in me was just telling me, you know, go watch The Matrix. And I'm like, yeah, okay. So I got up, and whenever I feel like God is telling me something, I kind of blow it off. Because if God is telling you something, you know, He's going to keep telling you, it's not going to leave your mind, basically. And so I kind of blew it off, and I was like, I'm going to see if it comes back. And it came back. I blew it off again, and it came back. So I'm like, okay, well, clearly this is God. So I said, I'm going to watch the movie. So as I sat down and got ready to put the movie on, something said, watch it 3 times. I'm like, 3 times? Back to back? Or are you talking about the first, second, third episode? You know, but I felt it was the same movie. So I'm like, okay. So I watched it 3 times, back to back. I mean, I spent my whole day just watching that one movie 3 times. And so after I got done, I was like, well, okay, I did what you said, now what? But nothing happened. So a couple of days went by, and I'm like, okay, I did what you said, now what? Nothing happened. Weeks turned into months. Like, I did what you said, nothing happened. And still nothing. So I was like, well, maybe it was something I ate that night, and maybe I was just tripping or something like that. You know what I'm saying? And so it wasn't until I had to get ready to do something for today that it hit me that this would be the topic. And then it all came to me like, oh, now I see where God's going with this. But the funny thing about it, like I said, this has always been a special movie to me. I'm such a Matrix fan that even on my phone, I can show you right now, I have you probably can't see it, but on my the screensaver, you have the code. You know what I'm saying? And I saw that one and I'm like, oh, this is really cool, and I put it on there. So when I say this movie's been special to me, it's been just that. So, any case, getting into the movie, actually before I even go into that, I really found it interesting that this is the last Shabbat of 2023. You know, next Shabbat we'll be stepping into 2024, and it really seemed weird that this would be the message that closes out 2023, going into 2024. And so, for the longest, I mean, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but for the longest, I felt something coming in 2024. I just have a real uneasiness about something big is coming. Not just in the natural realm, but in the spirit realm. Because whatever happens in the spirit realm, first of all, eventually manifests itself in the natural realm. So I've been feeling something really big is coming. And it's funny because when I listen to some of the news podcasts that I like to listen to, some of the commentators I like to listen to, the things they're saying confirms that. And then last week, Melissa stood in this exact same spot, and she began to talk about 2024. So I was like, well, I'm not off, because everything I'm seeing, everything I'm feeling is confirming. Something really big is about to happen in 2024. And so this message really is something, it's a wake-up call for the body, not necessarily Beit Messiah, but for the body of believers. Because if we talk about often that we're ready for Messiah to come back, but the reality is like, no, we're not. By far, because the Bible says he's coming back for a church without spot or blemish. And right now, what the state of the church looks like when you take your clean clothes out of the dryer, and I remember this when me and my wife got married. We washed clothes, me and the kids would wash clothes, and we had the clothes in the basket. And only time we go to the basket was we needed something and we get something out, not to go and iron it. But the clothes in the basket would be just wrinkled. I mean, you cannot go out in public with these clothes. You can't hang them up because they're just wrinkled. They're not fit for going out. But this is what the church looks like. We're clean, but we're wrinkled. We're not fit to go out because we need to be ironed out. So when we say we're ready for the Messiah to come back, it's like, no, not really, because the church has never been more fractured. It's never been more divided. We're supposed to be ahad. When the Jews had it, they brought it to us, and in the first century church, the Jews and Gentiles were together. But in today, you have several different Gentile congregations over here, scattered all around, and then over here you have the Jews. And that's not supposed to be, we're supposed to be one. And so this message is kind of getting into that. And so as we look at the movie, you know what I'm saying, going into the movie, you know, the main guy is Neo. And Neo kind of resembles us. We're living in a world, we're living a life, we have a great life, we have great jobs, you know, everything is great. You know, we have our friends and stuff like that, little things that we like to do. But at the same time, we know something is off. We just don't know what it is. You know what I'm saying? But we wake up every day, there's got to be more, there's something else. We don't know what it is. And Neo was kind of like this. And so he was in search mode trying to figure out what it was, but he couldn't figure out what it was. You know what I'm saying? Until, and we get into the first slide, Act 1, living your best life. As I said, Neo, you know, he was a computer hacker. He also had a job at a big computer company, whatever the case might be. And in the, you know, as the movie is going on, Neo gets invited to an event with some friends. And so they go to the club, or whatever the case might be, and he meets a young lady that's telling him that I know what you've been looking for. I know what you're searching for, whatever the case might be. And so this is the introduction, you know what I'm saying? And so as they're talking and stuff like that, you know, he's really curious about what this is. I mean, because clearly she knows something. And so she kind of represents us as believers, how we know what's going on, or we're supposed to know what's going on. And we're supposed to be able to give it to the world, or whatever the case might be. So she kind of represents that. And so as it's going on, lost my place. So as it's going on, you know, she tells him about a guy, you know, that he's been looking for, Morpheus. And so they set up the meeting, they go and they meet, he finally has a chance to meet Morpheus. And it's interesting that Morpheus is somebody that, so Neo operates, he's living within the realm of the Matrix. He doesn't know what the Matrix is, but he's governed by the Matrix. He doesn't understand what the Matrix is. When he meets Morpheus, Morpheus is someone that he lives in the Matrix, but he's not governed by the Matrix. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm gonna kind of explain what the matrix is in a minute. But for this season, we see the church resembles the world. You know what I'm saying? We're called to be set apart, but instead, we've conformed to the church, to the world. You know what I'm saying? The world looks at us, and we, as the world changes, we begin to change, to look like the world. So the first thing I'm gonna do is read Romans 12, 1 and 2, Elisha.
I exhort you, therefore, brothers, in view of God's mercies, to offer yourselves as a sacrifice, living and set apart for God. This will please Him. It is logical temple worship for you. In other words, do not let yourselves be conformed to the standards of the Olam Hazeh. Instead, keep letting yourselves be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you will know what God wants and will agree that what He wants is good, satisfying, and able to succeed.
So we're supposed to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. But the problem is that rather than our minds being renewed, we're so busy conforming. And so the church's cause should be the world's cause, but it's the other way around. The world's cause has begun to be our cause. When the world talked about Black Lives Matter, it's in the church Black Lives Matter. When it talked about trans rights, it got into the church trans rights. When it talked about abortion rights, it got into church abortion rights. So everything that the world begins to champion, the church has begun to champion. And so it's like the world sets the trend for the church, and we follow the church. When you come into the church, the people are looking just like the world, you know? And so it's interesting that the stuff that they're in outside, when they come in church and see the exact same thing inside the church, the problem is they're like, well, they're inside the church, but they're living just the way I'm living. So what needs to change in my life? I'm fine the way I am clearly. And so it tells them that there's no reason for them to be in here. It's a waste of time. You know what I'm saying? So this is something that we as a body of believers have to fix. So the problem is that with this, actually no. Let me get tongue-tied. Go back to Morpheus. So Morpheus opens up Neo's eyes, and Neo's overwhelmed with the revelation of the things that he's telling him. And so, like Morpheus, our job is to bring revelation to the world. And so, this is how we win souls to Yeshua. And so, having understanding as to the existence of the matrix, Neo is now presented with a choice. So Morpheus tells him, you know, you can take the red pill, and I can expose this thing to you, or you can take the blue pill, wake up in your bed like nothing happened, and just think whatever you want to think. So at this point, there's a choice that has to be made. Do you want to know what the matrix is? Or do you want to not and just live your life wondering, what's this thing that I feel that's off? So Neo he chooses to take the red pill. And so there's a movie that's out right now called Leave This World Behind. And it's funny, in one of the scenes in it, you have people that's on the beach. And I thought this was really interesting. You have people that's on the beach. And in the distance, there's a big, not a freight line, cargo ship. And they see it, you know, it's coming towards them, but it's so far out, people are like, it's out there, it's probably going to stop in a minute or whatever. So they're having a good time, drinking a little umbrella drinks, just having a good time, laughing, joking, kids are playing and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the ship is steady coming closer and closer. And they'll look and see it coming and like, well, it'll stop sooner or later. So they see something is happening, but nobody has a mind to do anything about it. So they're doing their thing, laughing, joking, having a good time. Somebody looks up again. That ship sure is getting close. I mean, and it's like ridiculously close at this point, and the guy's like, it'll stop sooner or later. And they're going about their way, and after a while, it's about to run aground. They're like, wait, I think we need to go. Really? And so this is kind of the state of the church. We see something is coming, but rather than reacting to it in the distance, we're sitting there thinking, well, it's not going to come. But the reality is it's going to come, and it's going to be bad. You know what I'm saying? So we have to get to a place where we are not so much plugged into the matrix, but plugged to the spiritual things, plugged into God. The next one, what is the matrix? So, the matrix, Morpheus explains that the matrix is a system of control, right? And it's not like a simple object that you say, oh, this is the matrix, but it's a bunch of things that make up the matrix. So it's a system of complete control. And so, with this, again, you how can I say it? It's a system of control where the life is governed by, basically. our existence. You know what I'm saying? The matrix is a system where it controls how we think, how we act, what we wear, you know what I'm saying, how we are in our relationships, you know what I'm saying. The system of the matrix is a control that's a spiritual thing that's designed to lead us away from the things of God. Ultimately, what happens is that we're so overwhelmed with these things, and so the system of the matrix would be a system that is full of the cares of this life. And we know the scripture tells us that we are not supposed to, that we're supposed to cast our cares on Him. We're not supposed to be concerned with the cares of this life, but the things of Yeshua. And so the cares of this life, you know, having the job, having the money, having things, you know what I'm saying, the vacations, and all these other things that are contrary to the things of God. I'm not saying that you can't have money, I'm not saying you can't have jobs, but you're so consumed in these things that when it comes to the things of God, when it comes to spending time with God, we don't really have that much time because our time is so consumed with everything else that I was telling my family last time we was on our Bible study, if we were to sit down and itemize everything we do from the beginning of the day to the end of the day, and then you would break it down into percentages, and you look at that, how much of that percentage of your day was spent with God? The reality of it is that now many can say, oh, I had 10, 15, 20%. It's more like 3, 4, maybe 5%, because there's so many other things we have going on that we're not giving God the time. But if we was to step away from a lot of these distractions, a lot of these things, a lot of these cares of life, then we would have more time with God. God would be able to minister to us, begin to lift us up, strengthen us, to lead us and guide us in the direction He wants us to go. But we're so clouded with the things that's going on in the world that it's not happening that way. Look at Elisha, go to Philippians 4, 7 and 8.
Then God Shalom, passing all understanding, will keep your hearts and minds safe in union with the Messiah Yeshua. In conclusion, brothers, focus your thoughts on what is true, noble, righteous, pure, lovable, or admirable, on some virtue or on something praiseworthy.
So it's God's peace that guards our hearts and minds. And so, again, we said earlier, we were called to be transformed by the renewing of our minds and not to conform to the world. Look at Philippians 2:5.
Let your attitude toward one another be governed by your being in union with the Messiah Yeshua.
And then I want 1 Peter 1:13. I got a lot of verses. 1 Peter 1:13.
Therefore, get your minds ready for work, keep yourselves under control, and fix your hopes fully on the gift you will receive when Yeshua the Messiah is revealed.
So the battle ultimately is for the mind. And the matrix is all about clouding the mind. You know what I'm saying? Our mind's supposed to be always on the things of above, not the things that are below. And so the matrix is a system that's designed to cloud the minds. Look at 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6.
For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war after the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty through God to the pulling down of the strongholds, casting down imaginations and every high thing that exalteth itself to the knowledge of God, and bringing into captivity every thought to the obedience of Christ, and having in readiness to revenge all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled.
Again, in this system of the matrix, again, and as I keep saying matrix, I want you to kind of think about the system of control. You know what I'm saying? And in this system of control, the mindset is to keep our minds clouded, whatever the case might be. As long as your minds are clouded, you're not able to really hear from God when we're supposed to hear from God. And this right here is what keeps the church in a defeated state. But you see, it's all about warfare. We're called to be warriors. We're called to, you know, that's why, like, even in, what is that, Ephesians 6, when it talks about, you know, the whole armor, we're called to engage in battle. But in battle and everything like that, you know, your mind has to be right. You can't have your mind full of all kind of other stuff. It needs to be right. If not, you're going to be defeated. Look at Romans 7 and 23. Romans 7, 23.
But I see a different law in the parts of my body, waging war against the law of my mind, and taking me prisoner to the law of the sin in the parts of my body.
The system of the matrix wages war against the mind. And so this is the theme, the mind, because of the fact that if your mind is off, the body's going to be off. So this is the gist of what I'm getting to. Look at Luke 21:34. Luke 21:34.
Be on your guard so that your minds are not dulled from carousing, drunkenness, and worries of life, or that day will come upon you unexpectedly.
So that your mind is not dulled. We have to get our minds right. We have to have our minds right. So the outcome of those who do not unplug from this system of control is going to be this. Your mind's going to be clouded, it's going to be dulled. Let's look at Matthew 22 and 37. Matthew 22, 37.
He told him, "You are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your strength."
So my question would be this: can we truly love God with our minds clouded full of all these things that are contrary to the nature of God?
Nope.
If your mind is so clustered with so much junk, you know what I'm saying? It's kind of hard to give it to Him if it's full of all kind of other stuff. So a lot of things that we have going on in our lives, we have to unplug from. We have to release. You know what I'm saying? When I look at, I was thinking about during the time of the first century church that the people that they dealt with were a religious people. So religion, whether it was pagan, whether it was Christian, religion was a big part of their life. So it was easy for them to go and evangelize and deal with people, preach the gospel and everything like that. In our society today, there is so much that's going on that the people, we're not dealing with the religious people. No, we're dealing with the people that religion is like the very bottom list of their everyday existence, which makes it kind of hard to engage in conversation. I think that if Paul, if Peter, if the apostles were here today and were trying to evangelize in this century the way they did back then, I think it would be a lot different outcome. I'm not saying they wouldn't have converted people, but I think it would have been a lot more difficult when you have people that don't have a religious, and I hate using the word religious, but they don't have that plug where they're, our existence is hinged around the belief in Mithra or whoever the God might be. I think it would have been a lot different. But the crown jewel of all the verses would be this one, Romans 8, verse 7.
For the mind controlled by the old nature is hostile to God, because it does not submit itself to God's Torah. Indeed, it cannot.
If we refuse to unplug from this system, allowing the mess of the world inside of us to be put out, we gradually become hostile towards the things of God. So ultimately, this is the essence of the carnal mind. And the carnal mind is enmity against the things of God. So we have to really release some things so that we're not carnal minded. But the more we focus with things, with having things, with the cares of this life, it begins to be really difficult to still be spiritual minded. The next slide. So exposing the matrix. So reiterating that the battle is about the mind, let's look at the inner workings of the matrix. There was a quote by Malcolm X years ago, and I thought this was really interesting, where he said that the media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent, and that's power because they control the mind of the masses. And I saw that quote, and I was like, that's really powerful. That the people that control the media can control the minds. They can make the innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And when you look at what's going on in the world today, I'll give you an example. You look at when, and I don't want to get political, but I have to use this because this is such a good example. When Trump was in office, for his entire time in office, they would say he colluded with Russia. And that's all we heard. Russia. That's all we heard for the whole 4 years. Everybody's like, he's got to be guilty. They tried to impeach him behind it, and they failed. But then we find out years later that it was all a hoax. And all the evidence that they said they had really wasn't credible evidence. But because the media said that the innocent was guilty, the world said he has to be guilty. And so what ended up happening, even today when you talk about it, well, I don't care what the outcome of the impeachment trial was, he's still guilty. Based off of what? The innocent guilty and the guilty innocent. And then on the flip side of the coin, you look at Biden. With all the stuff that he's been implicated in, Hunter, and the rest of his family, you have a mountain. I mean, I look at the Senate hearings, there's a mountain of evidence showing that he's guilty. But the media says he's innocent. And so because the media says he's innocent, everybody's like, well, he's innocent. So now the media has made the guilty innocent. And it's regardless about all the evidence that they have, he's still innocent. And I'm like, wow.
You're not sharing the truth.
Exactly. And that's the problem, because there was a time, and I'm glad you said it, because there was a time where the media it was a long time ago, but they were unbiased. They would just report the facts. Now everything is politicized. This right here is another example of the system of control. Because of the fact that if I can control your minds to make you think a certain way, I can control the outcome of all kinds of things. An example of this control would be when I was in Iraq, all the times I was in Iraq, I remember watching on, they had a television program, AFN, Armed Forces Network. And they would always have celebrities, whether it's basketball players, football players, baseball players, hockey, race car drivers, all the celebrities doing a shout to the soldiers, say, hey, I thank you for everything you're doing for protecting our freedom and securing our way of life or whatever. And you hear it so much that I could go to one of my soldiers and I could say, why are we here? We're defending our freedom and our way of life. And I'm like, well, in what way was September 11th, and it was horrible, don't get me wrong, but in what way did it attack our freedom or our way of life? Yes, it was a terrorist attack, but our freedom was never attacked by it, was never hindered by it. But yet still, because people hear it so much, that began to be the mantra. We're here defending our freedom and securing our way of life. You know what I'm saying? So it begins to be a subliminal thing where you hear so much, now you begin to believe this. Now it's justified why we're here. So during the 60s and in the early 70s, I was sharing this with my wife, there was a time when the TV would go off. I said it was 1 o'clock, my wife said about midnight, but I think it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, no, in the 80s too? I'm really in the 80s. I know the 70s and stuff, but I was a 70s baby. But you gonna walk on. But in the but the point being is that what would happen is that after the last program would go off, they would have the national anthem play. And you have the instrumental and all kind of patriotic pictures, and the words roll across the screen. And so if you don't know the lyrics, the lyrics go across the screen, so you can sing the lyrics, and it seemed really patriotic. The interesting thing about this, we find out years later that a 3-letter government agency, who shall remain nameless, was in trouble with Congress because they found out that they were putting subliminal messages in the words rolling across the screen. And so you don't really see them when you're looking at it, but if you look at it slowed down, and you can look at it now, you look at it slowed down, you see the subliminal messages inside there, and you're like, wow. So Congress got on them, and they admitted, yeah, we did it. Okay, well, you need to stop. And they're like, okay, we're gonna stop. In my mindset, I'm like, do you really think they listen to Congress? Personally, I don't. But it really blew my mind when I saw that, you know what I'm saying? But it's interesting. So the subliminal message that came across the screen said this: trust the U.S. government. God is real. God is watching. Believe in the government. God. Rebellion will not be tolerated. Obey, consume, obey, consume. And I'm like, wow. And this was the 60s, 70s, possibly the 80s. I don't remember that far, but possibly the 80s. And I'm like looking at that, what impact could that have had on the people? I don't have any data on that, but I think it's kind of interesting, And during that time, there was a thing called MK Ultra that this was supposed to be connected to, you know what I'm saying? And so, looking at it, again, a system of control, And so when you fast forward into today's time and stuff like that, I think it's evolved to the point where it's now infected into the entertainment industry. Because within the entertainment industry and the music industry and stuff like that, you find that the celebrities are governing how we act. When the music comes out, they tell you, what kind of shoes to wear. I remember in the 80s, Run DMC was the thing. My Adidas, everybody went out and get Adidas. Nelly had a song talking about Air Force Ones, everybody went and got Air Force Ones. Whatever they're saying, this is what everybody goes out and get. You know what I'm saying? So it's a system of control. They're telling you what to wear, whatever the latest celebrity's hairstyle is, everybody wants to get that because this person had that. Whatever the latest clothing line is, I want to get that because this person's wearing that. And so it began to be a thing of control where they begin to control everything. And then it gets to the point that what they say, the things that they say begins to guide us. We begin to share their ideals because they're our favorite celebrities. You know what I'm saying? And what they say is what we say, how we feel. And what's really interesting that within the past maybe 4 or 5 years, I noticed there's been a trend of a lot of rappers. None that I know, but I look at a lot of these videos on YouTube that's talking about a lot of them that get into Satanism. And in the videos, they are showing this stuff. And the people that are watching, the young kids, are seeing it, and they're getting into that. Because they think it's harmless, they think it's cool because the rappers glamorize it, you know what I'm saying? And even when you look at the Emmys and all these different awards, you're seeing this stuff. And the world is taking it, they're taking it in, they're embracing it, beginning to be part of their culture now. You know what I'm saying? Because this is beginning to be a system of control that's leading us further and further and further away from God. This right here is what the Matrix is all about, you know? And it's really funny that I look at, lately I've been, my latest YouTube craze has been watching some of these little youth rappers that still want to be gangbangers. And just watching them, and it's really mind-blowing seeing how many of them never make it to the age 21. Because they want to still be thugs, and then they want to be rappers, and they have great rap careers. They're doing good, but they still want to be in the street. And now they're killing each other. And I'm like, wow, you know, and then and then it's gotten to the point that social media has begun to be a part of it. Because now you see the stuff on social media. So now through social media, we're able to plug in to all of our favorite rappers in real time, our favorite actors, celebrities, whatever the case might be. And what they say, what they do, because it's part of what we do. And we, even the church is watching them. And the church is being influenced by it. And so again, we're looking just like the world, because the same thing they're seeing, we're seeing, and we're doing. And so when they come into church, we're looking just like them. You know? And so one of the interesting things they have going on now, and I marvel every time I see this, but they have a thing called a legal pit. And in the legal pits, you have a crowd of kids in a circle. You got cars, you know, doing spin outs in the circle. And so the cool thing is that stand right here, and I'm gonna hit you with the car when I come around. And they're actually sitting out there, getting hit by the car. And they're fine, they get up, woo, I survived. Are you serious? I mean, and my mind is blown when I see that, because I'm like, wow, this is the younger generation. They've been so heavily impacted by the system of control. And these are the people that when we die off, they're going to be the ones that are going to take over. The bad thing about that is that so many of them are dying needlessly, that I was telling my son last night, by the time you guys get grown and, you know, in your 30s and have families and stuff like that, it's going to really be hard to maintain the world, because of the fact that you guys, it's going to be a shortage of people, because so many people of your generation are being killed off. But it's the system of control that has the people that's, I have to do this because this person is doing this. I have to talk like this. I have to do this. You know what I'm saying? And so the value of life is no longer important. It's no longer sacred. It's nothing to kill somebody. If I say something about one of your dear friends, that's a green light for you to kill me. And I'm like, wow. But this is the system of control that's taken over. You know what I'm saying? And it's interesting because, again, at the very top of it, you have these powerful execs. And they're the ones that control the flow of what's going to be spoken, what's going to be taught, what's going to be endorsed, whatever the case might be. And it's interesting that when you look at these people, you find out that a lot of these people are connected to satanic rituals and stuff like that, satanic organizations. And you're like, wow, it makes sense. Because Hasatan, rather than trying to deal with everyday people, he's like, if I could deal with the head, and I could get them going this way, everybody else will follow. And so that's the mindset now. So whereas we look as a church today, you know, we think that, you know, our life is great, you know, we don't have any real problems and stuff like that. The devil's not really messing with us. The reason he's not really messing with us, the way you see in the first century church in the time of Yeshua, is because he has the system of control. He has the matrix that's dealing with us. So here's the thing. Rather than using spirits to possess you, I can just use the system right here to get into your mind, to control you, to lead you and guide you in this direction, and you're going to go this direction. There's a series I'm doing on my podcast called The Seeds of Bad Fruit. And the idea behind it is the works of the flesh that's talked about in Galatians 5. When everybody reads it, they always think about the fruits of the Spirit. But God had me looking at the works of the flesh and do a segment on each of the works. And what God was showing me, these works are like seeds of bad fruit. And when these seeds are planted, they eventually grow up. And when they grow up, they begin to have branches, they begin to have fruit. And the fruit on the trees would be the various manifestations of whatever that fruit is, whether it's adultery, whether it's homosexuality, whether it's murder, whatever. And so the thing is that because it's beginning to be a habit, it's a lot easier to break a habit than it is just cast out a demon. If this person has a spirit in them, and I go and I cast that spirit out. Once that spirit's out, he's whole and restored. But if it's a habit, I can pray about this habit all I want. But because it's not a spirit, it requires effort on my part. I have to do something. And I have to have consistency behind it, because if I don't have the consistency, they say it takes 6 weeks for a habit to become a habit. So if it takes 6 weeks for a habit to become a habit, and I've had this habit 10, 15, 20 years, imagine how long it would take me to break it. I'm not saying it's going to take a long time, but it's going to take consistency on my part in order to break this. And so the enemy is like, why use demons that can be cast out when I can just groom you into this? And with the system of control, seeds are being planted. And left unchecked, they grow, they become trees, they yield fruit. And now we have a whole problem. And now you have people in the church wondering, why am I still stuck in homosexuality? I thought it was a spirit, but I've been praying about the spirit, but the spirit won't leave. It's not a spirit, it's a fruit. You've been groomed into this. So it takes effort on your part in addition to the prayer. You think about Peter and John when they were at the beautiful gate, and you had the guy that came up, and he was saying, he was asking for alms. And they were like, we don't have any silver and gold, but what we do have, we give to you. And they said, in the name of Yeshua, we command you to rise up and walk. So the man was crippled, he knew he was. When they yanked him up, it forced him to take action. The healing would not take place unless he took action and did what they said, rise up and walk. And so, just as it is with the seeds of bad fruit, you have to take action in addition to that prayer if you expect to have manifestation. And so the enemy, this is how he's working, dealing with the mind. That's why I keep saying over and over again, it's a battle for the mind. And our minds are so clouded and everything like that. Sometimes we are lacking victory in certain areas because of the fact that it's a habit, it's not a spirit. And then we begin to think, well, maybe God can't heal me from this. Some people even begin to feel like, well, maybe God doesn't love me. Maybe this thing isn't real. Some leave the church. But it's a trick from the enemy, because it's the system of control that's born against your mind. So you can't trust what's in your mind at all. You have to trust what the word says. We have to be able to have discernment to be able to discern what's spiritual versus what's me. If I have some things going on in my life and I'm thinking I'm trying to crave this thing out, but the reality is I'm doing, let's say I have issue with porn, and I'm praying, God, get me out of this, but I'm still watching it. I'm like, I gotta cut it, because I can't ask him to take me out of it if I'm still watching it. You know what I'm saying? And so it begins to be a thing where I have to consistently have action, which means every time this urge comes up, I have to resist that. The Bible says, submit yourselves to God, resist the devil, and he'll flee. So in order to resist him, for him to flee, I have to first submit myself to God. I submit myself to God. I resist this urge. And as I'm doing this, it's causing the enemy to flee. But I have to consistently do this. It can't be 3 times it hit me and I resist it, but the 4th time I yield it. Because now you have to start all over again. Because you have to consistently, just like you consistently made it a habit, you have to consistently break that habit. So, where am I at? Until we realize that what the matrix is, we will continue to operate within the parameters of it. And so, thinking that we're walking upright before God when we're really not, And it's funny because people tend to think that because they're not really going through things that the enemies, that they're walking upright before God. But Peter and all the apostles, they walked upright before God, but they went through some things. They had spiritual battles and stuff like that. Yeshua had spiritual battles. You know what I'm saying? So why are we thinking that because we're not having problems that, we must be doing something better than Yeshua, Peter, Paul, and all the other apostles? If you're not going, and Melissa said this last week and it kind of hit me, if you are not actively dealing with spiritual battles, in your life, you're probably not even in the fight. Because if you're on the sidelines of the battlefield, you're not a threat. Why am I going to waste one of my bullets shooting you? You're not even actively in the fight. You know what I'm saying? If you're not in the fight, I'm not even paying you no attention because you're not a threat. I kind of think about when I was a kid, we used to like to play baseball. And, sometimes you had that one kid that really sucked bad. And he's at bat, and we'd be like, oh, he's coming. Everybody go up and take the gloves off. We go and we sit down on the floor and everything like that. And the pitcher would pitch the ball and strike him out. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not a threat. But one day, we did that, and that dude got lucky and hit the ball out there. You know what I'm saying? But The whole thing is that, we begin to think, the enemy's looking at us like we're not a threat. You're not a problem, so why am I going to deal with you? You know what I'm saying? And if I can keep you bound in your mind, where you're not going forth in God, you know what I'm saying? That's half the battle right there. You're at a standstill, you're in a place of stagnation. And many of us are in that place of stagnation, because of the fact that there's some things in our mind that we need to release from. Look at, Elisha, go to Jeremiah 17:9.
The heart is more deceitful than anything else and mortally sick. Who can fathom it?
That's really deep. In the heart, we tend to think our hearts are right. You know what I'm saying? The heart is deceitfully wicked. But in our hearts, we're thinking we're upright before God and we're being led astray. Earlier I was talking about the music industry. And their mantra in the music industry would basically be the same as, I'm sure you guys know who Anton LaVey is, right?
No.
Anton LaVey, y'all would think I'm off the left field, but Anton LaVey is the guy that wrote the Satanic Bible.
That's why I don't know him.
Well, I'm kind of crazy because you know what? I'm going to tell you something about me, sis. A lot of times when I look for information dealing with stuff like that, I'll go to the dark sources just because I'm like, I want to hear what they're saying. So if I'm quoting something, I'm getting from a reliable source, not something that I think. So I tend to, like, if I do something on Halloween, I'm like, what are they saying about Halloween on this side? So when I come out and I talk about it, I'm saying, well, this is what they're saying. You know what I'm saying? But Anton LaVey, in his Satanic Bible, he made one commandment, and it is so appealing. You know what his one commandment is? Because God has, 613? Anton LaVey wrote one. Do as thou wilt. This shall be the whole of the law. Do whatever you want. How appealing is that? You can do whatever you want. You're good. You know what I'm saying? They used to have a song, it's your thing. Do what you want to do. This was the mindset, you know what I'm saying? And I remember watching a video with Jay-Z, and he had a shirt saying, do as thou wilt. I'm like, wow. And people are seeing that, and they're wearing that. You know what I'm saying? And this is the mentality. Do whatever you want. It's all good. Eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow we die. I remember in the movie Nefarious, the guy was talking to the demon and stuff like that. And the guy said, Edward said, I didn't know we were in a fight. He says, that's why your side's losing. Because we don't know we're in a fight. Elisha, go to 1 Peter 4:17.
For the time has come for the judgment to begin. It begins with the household of God, and if it starts with us, what will the outcome be for those who are disobeying God's good news?
This really scared me. And the reason I say it scared me because it said judgment begins with us. There's a very thin line we have to walk on. You miss that line, you got a problem. I always sit up and one thing I always talk about when I'm behind the pulpit is the root word for Torah is yara, the archery term, which is basically to shoot an arrow with the intention of hitting a goal. If you miss that, you miss the mark. So our goal is to hit that target. You know what I'm saying? Look at this verse right here. You can't veer to the left nor to the right, because if you do, you miss that mark. This is judgment starting at the house of God. And so when I read that, I kind of thought about that. I'm like, wow, I really got to make sure I'm crossing every T and dotting every I. You know what I'm saying? And speaking for me personally, as I was putting this together, I was thinking about all the things that I'm watching, all the things that, that I have going on that would be considered part of the matrix. And I'm like, I got some things to let go. Because of the fact that these things, what you intake, you feed yourself. You know what I'm saying? If you watch a certain thing, it begins to be part of who you are. If you listen to certain music that's saying certain things, as you're saying that over and over, it gets to be part of who you are. And I was like, well, I got some things I need to get rid of because of the fact that I'm not trying to be plugged into the matrix. I need to get a release from this thing. So the system of the matrix is a win-win for Hasatan, because the problem is, as I said earlier, he no longer has to. It's no longer about a spiritual thing, but it's a natural thing. And making to break a habit is a lot easier than casting out a demon. So I just kind of wanted to reiterate that. So having a clear understanding about the matrix, Neo undergoes a rigorous training with Morpheus, and he's training him and stuff like that, telling him, you have to get out of your mind, basically. Don't think you are, know you are. You know what I'm saying? You have to realize who you are, And so they went through the whole training aspect of whatever the case might be, and after a while, he began to get better. Now he's in a position where he's unplugged from the matrix like everybody else is. And it's funny because the moment he unplugged, all the agents begin to come after him. He began to be their number one priority. When you unplug from the matrix, the enemy is like, I have to get you now, because now that you're unplugged and I'm no longer having influence over you, that means that the Spirit of God is influencing you, and I don't want that. And this is when all hell breaks loose. When you break loose from the matrix, when you break loose from that system of control, when you no longer think the way that you used to think. So again, like I said, TV shows, the movies, things like that, we have to really be mindful of what we're allowing ourselves to take in. You know, the Bible, Paul said, all things are lawful, but not all things are expedient. So some things, just because this type of music or these type of movies are not, there's no law against them, that does not mean that it's good for you. That doesn't mean it's good for me. So I have to look at certain things and be like, okay, well, should I be watching this type of thing? Like there's some shows my wife, and I've talked about this before, that we used to like to watch. And a lot of them are starting to have the little gay stuff in it. I didn't even say it like that. LGBTQ content in it. And so I'll be sitting back and like, man, you know, I want to watch this. And the reason I say that is because the more and more that you watch, and it's bombarded on everything, but the more and more that you watch it, what happens is you begin to be desensitized to it. It's normalized. You begin to accept it, despite the fact that the Bible defines it as an abomination. But we begin to be acceptance to it. You know what I'm saying? So things like that, I'm like, I need to unplug from. Because of the fact that I don't want to get to the point that God sees things this way, but I'm seeing it this way. Because the Word of God, what was said in the beginning, it stands for all eternity. So just because society has turned, that doesn't mean the Word of God is turning. The problem is that the church is trying to make the Word turn with the world. But that's not the way it's supposed to be. We're supposed to guide the world towards the church. And so we learned that Yeshua prayed constantly. Scripture tells us that he prayed without ceasing. And so we're so busy with the cares of this life that we really can't apply that time that he applied to it. You know what I'm saying? And this is a hindrance because it's in praying. The side that you feed the most will be the strongest. If you feed your natural man more, he's going to be stronger than the spirit. If you feed your spirit man more, he's going to be stronger than the natural. But we tend to feed the natural side more. And this is why we're weak. This is why we're not as effective as we should be. So it's a myriad of reasons. But the system of control is the matrix that we're plugged into. So again, we're in the world. We're not of the world. We're in the matrix, but we're not of the matrix. Last one. The next slide. Fighting the good fight. So at this point, you know what I'm saying? Neo was in a fight with one of the agents, and he's running, but after a while he's like, you know what? I'm not running no more. I'm standing my ground. Now he's able to hold his ground against the enemy and defeats the enemy. When we're unplugged from the matrix, we're able to fight the good fight of faith. When we're plugged into it, we can't really fight it because we're weighted down by so many things. Our mindsets, the way we think, the way we perceive things are clouded. So we can't be used by God the way he wants to use us. As believers, this is the power that we've been given, but because many of us are plugged into the matrix, we're unaware of who we are and the authority that God has given to us. I was going to have Elisha read Ephesians 6 and 10, but you guys know that, but that's the whole armor of God, so I'm going to just pass that one. So the identity of the church cannot be revealed when we're in the matrix. So after putting this together, when I think of how Yeshua says that we're in the world, not of it, it really takes on a whole different scenario or meaning for me. When we get the revelation that we are not put here for ourselves or to live the good life or acquire things or to be entertained, but rather to be ambassadors for the kingdom, it will become so much easier for us to unplug from the matrix. So some people are like Lot's wife. Remember Lot, when the angels were taking him out of Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, her heart was there because she had things, she had establishment, she had friends, she had all this stuff that's going on, so her heart was there. So even though a divine being told her, leave and don't turn back, she still turned back, you know. And so a lot of us are kind of like that. Well, I just don't want to give up what I have. But the thing is that we have to realize we weren't put here for ourselves. But the system of the matrix, the system of control, has us thinking that it's all about acquiring things. And so things have ultimately become our God. Because whatever you put before God has become your God. Amen. That's all I got.